All right, guys, welcome to the Digital Barbell Podcast. Thanks so much for being here. If this is your first time finding our podcast, my name is Jonathan. My wife Blakely and I own Digital Barbell. We're an online training and nutrition coaching company, helping people all over the world get in shape without all the silly nonsense that you find online, with a lot of programs and stuff like that. So, welcome. If you like fitness, nutrition, mindset, content, make sure you subscribe before you leave. Got a great interview for you today. You're going to be hearing from Brad Jensen. We were lucky enough to meet Brad a couple years ago at a business conference. You'll hear about that in the intro, but he's got an amazing story. He's overcome a lot of things in his life, and now he owns his own coaching company. And I think you're really going to be inspired by this episode. We talked about a book in this episode, but I don't think we ever mentioned what the title of it was or how you could get it. It's called New Morning Mercies. So I'll put a link to that in the description below. But hope you enjoyed this interview with Brad Jensen. All right, today's guest is a former bodybuilder, a dad, and a coach who is not afraid to dress up like a woman in order to get his point across on social media. Welcome to the podcast, Brad.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. That was actually the most unique intro I've had yet. So
It's kind of my thing, man. So people that don't know you are like, what did he just say? So why don't you tell everybody kind of what I'm talking about with the dressing up like a woman?
yeah, yeah. So I have an Instagram character named Sheena, which is it's really cringe, but I yeah, it started as kind of a joke. She was originated during COVID, which
Mhm.
obviously made all of us a little crazy, right? We were staying at home, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna spice this up a little. I'm gonna kind of dress up like a girl and do this. And my wife at the time was like, that sounds awful. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna do it. So um, it was kind of a simulation of all the clients that I had over the years that were really painful to work with at times. So
Oh man, I'm dying. But use it as a good opportunity to bring up common things that people struggle with, and I'm pretty sure it's been a hit for you, right?
yeah, yeah, she has, unfortunately. So
So you have to keep her around whether you like it or not.
yeah, yeah, it's
So
a whole thing.
I've actually followed you on social media long before we got to meet. We met Blakely and I met you up in Seattle at a business conference, mentorship, whatever you want to call it, up at Cody McBroom's gym a couple years ago. So it was cool to get to meet you in person. We like went around the room, and all the people who were paying to be there are coaches, and we're going to glean business advice from you guys, and everybody got to say like what they wanted to get out of the weekend. Some people were like, I want to learn more about sales or program writing or client retention. And you probably don't remember this, but thing I said is I'm just here to figure out what Brad does for his arms
I do
because
remember that. And then Cody had to throw in like a low blow up my legs. I remember. So
So those of you guys that are only listening to this and not watching it on YouTube, you can't see that Brad's he's jacked. He's like his Instagram profile is the sober bodybuilder, and I mentioned in the intro that he's a former bodybuilder. So I never did get the secret to arms from that weekend. So maybe we'll maybe we'll get to that, or maybe it's just the secret of you've been training your arms and shoulders for a really long time, and that's the
yeah.
secret.
Yeah. And also it's great. I they all give me shit about, my legs and they're finally coming along a little more, but I train those things hard twice a week and people will be like, "What do you do for your shoulders?" I'm like, "You would be very unimpressed." Like again, it was just genetically they just grew much faster than anything else. And back when I used to train them really hard, like got pretty wide. And so again, it's that, I look at my buddies who have these big legs. I'm like, dude, I would trade you in a heartbeat. And they're like, no, you wouldn't. Because then when you have them, you'd be like, I want bigger shoulders. So it's just
Yeah.
we always want what we can't have.
Nobody walks around at the beach with their pants off, but a lot of people walk around with their shirt off.
Yes, this is true. Unless guys wear Speedos nowadays, that's kind of
True,
in. So
true. Not my vibe, but to each their own. But during that weekend, you kind of told your backstory, and I did some digging. And on your Instagram profile, you have a pinned post up at the top where you kind of talk about your background. And I definitely want people to go check that out. I mean, it kind of brought me to tears when I watched it the other day. But just recap for everybody, kind of what your story is.
short version here, we'll do. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
I know you tell it a
yeah.
lot.
Yeah, I'll kind of do it a Cliff Notes and if you want to expand on it. But I I got into drugs fairly young. Well, I found alcohol at like 13. I was a chubby, overweight kid. My friends kind of teased me. I found alcohol. It kind of made the teasing go away because I made them kind of laugh with me instead of at me. And I come from I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, and my family at the time was Mormon, and so I was the youngest of five. Like my parents didn't drink; that wasn't in our household. That's kind of part of the religion. I mean, they didn't even drink coffee at the time, and so it was, I kind of knew it was wrong, but I just and then. But I liked the feeling I got from it because I didn't have to be me, and so it progressed pretty fast. I got into bodybuilding and fitness about 16 years old. I got into fitness a lot, went to the gym, fell in love, and I quit drinking altogether. And because I remember these older guys telling me, hey, bud, like drinking's really bad for building muscle. So you got to quit partying. And they were just trying to be helpful. And I was like,
Yeah.
all right, cool, I'll stop. So I did. But then, my end of my junior year of high school, I found opiate painkillers, and it wasn't because of a surgery. It wasn't because it was just I was going to a party. A kid offered them to me, and he said one word that I'll never forget. He said, all the bodybuilders are doing them, which is inherently false, just for the record.
Hmm.
But I was like, oh, he's like, yeah, because then you go train hard the next day. You don't have a hangover. It's not bad for building muscle. So I took them and I fell in love, and it was like I had arrived at home in that moment, which is funny. I hear people that have surgery, either they take the narcotic painkillers and either they hate them or they love them. It doesn't seem
Yeah.
even to be anywhere in between.
Yeah.
And so but I loved them, and unfortunately they didn't always love me back. So I continued to use drugs, and was still into fitness. I graduated high school. Like I didn't drop out of high school, but I was, using them more and more frequently towards the end of high school. And quickly that progressed to heroin, which it was a cheaper option. I never thought I would do that. It was a line in the sand I had drawn, like,
Hmm.
nope, that's for like junkies. I come from like, a normal middle class family. Like we didn't like, from the suburbs. Like that's just like, I was like, I don't do that. But I did it. And then that took me down a whole path. And so that was at 18 years old, that the first time I shot up heroin. And again, something I never thought I would do. Like if you would have strapped me up to a lie detector test 4 months before and be like, would you ever shoot up heroin? I would have said no and passed with flying colors. But desperate times called for that. I gotten an addiction by that point, meaning I was physically hooked on the opiates, and the supply kind of ran out because I was getting pharmaceutical drugs, and obviously not legitimately. And so that's the direction I went for the next 10 years of my life. From 18 to 28, I spent in the thralls of addiction. I mean, and there's a saying in kind of the recovery community of it gets worse, never better when you're addicted to
Yeah.
substances like that. And that was my experience. Like it just kind of year over year progressively would get worse. And I would have these bouts of sobriety because I would go to rehab or detox or whatever. And but then I would always just find my way back to it. And I did that for, like I said, for a whole decade. And started going to getting incarcerated a lot, ended up going to jail frequently. And it was just, I got to the point where I remember thinking like this was not how my life was supposed to look.
Yeah.
I just couldn't comprehend all of a sudden how I just had turned into a you know a convicted felon who was a junkie. Like um it just, even looking back, it was just like, it floors me that I ended up where I ended up. And so, um, finally, by the grace again, I'm talking, I spent the whole last year of my addiction, which would have been 2012, homeless. And I never slept on the streets. I was very resourceful, but I did not have a home. I bounced
Yeah.
from place to place, motel to motel, and just kind of living a life of crime and drugs. And parents and family had to cut me off because I wasn't trustworthy. I mean, it got bad and it got dark. And by the end of that year, by the grace of God, like I got sober on my sobriety day is November 20th of 2012. And I owe that to God first and foremost. And I've put in a lot of work along the way, but there was definitely some things out of my control, these miraculous experiences that happened, including I had finally prayed, and hopefully it's okay. I share this on. I prayed the last 3 days before I got sober, and I hadn't prayed to God in years before that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I just was desperate and I said, I don't know how to stop this. This is getting bad. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's getting cold here. November in Utah is not a pleasant time to be homeless. It's cold. The winter's starting to come. And I didn't know how I was going to stop. But that night I was arrested in a stolen car that I didn't even know was stolen. Again, another kind of God shot moment was, um, I got arrested. We got pulled over, and I didn't know why we were getting pulled over. The kid informed me that, the car I was driving was stolen. I did not know that. So I went to jail and I detoxed, the worst I ever had. And leading up to that, I'd had a pretty cool experience that same day, earlier that day at my grandfather's funeral, which was kind of a pivotal turning point for me. And I believe that he had something to do with that, helped get me sober. So I went to jail and I detoxed and it was awful. And I got out and I've never looked back since. And that wasn't the first time I'd been in jail. It was like the 17th.
Yeah.
But something was different. I finally made a decision that I was done. And I think that's really cool when I see that, especially when I was coaching more people, I'd see this in clients where they make that decision. Like, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Like, I'm done doing this game where I lose the weight, gain the weight, lose the weight. And you just kind of see that the light switches.
Yeah.
And that was my experience. Was it finally just clicked. And I was willing, no matter how hard it was, I was willing to do the hard that ultimately would actually get me somewhere in life, instead of, because it's all hard. It was hard being homeless and addicted to drugs, and it was super hard getting sober. It's all
Yeah.
hard, but one hard is going to lead me ultimately to have the great life I have today, and the other hard was going to lead me dead. And so,
Yeah.
um, either way I spun it, it was really hard. But I always remembered
Yeah.
that in the beginning, this is hard, but it was always hard. Like waking up every morning wondering how you're going to get $10 so you can do your drugs, so just so you can feel normal, so then you can try to do whatever else you have to do to get more drugs. Like
Yeah.
that, I look back and I'm like, that was so hard, but it became so normal. And so, that's a little bit of my backstory. And so, like I said, in this November, I'll be celebrating 12 years of continuous sobriety, and I'm really grateful for that. And obviously, it's in my Instagram handle. I was competing at the time, which is why it's
Right.
the sober bodybuilder, but I don't compete anymore. But my sobriety is a still probably it is the most important thing I do on a daily basis today, because without that, I know that I would lose everything. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's no way you could look back at where you were before you got sober and think that this will be possible with your life right now.
ever.
And Blakely and I are very open about our Christian faith and our
Oh
social
yeah,
media and
that's right.
everything. So,
Oh yeah,
um,
you told me to get this. I read a daily
yeah,
reflection last year. Was a book you guys recommended to me.
right.
Right.
So I think like it's funny, like and then we're going to get into this because of your approach to coaching, which I'm sure you developed because of your past experience. But you get in these relationships with your clients, and they hire you for nutrition and exercise training advice, and you can't help but look at the problems that are holding them back from those goals and be like, you need Jesus. Like that is the ultimate solution to these problems that are just manifesting in your health and fitness. Is you need a deeper, you need that moment that you had where you felt like God was there for you in that time, and you had a deeper purpose than just like even than wanting to get sober.
Mm, yes. Like it was, and it, there was something bigger. But again, I could have never imagined that my life would be where it is today. Um, but I know this, and I actually had some almost survivor's guilt for a while. So I overdosed 6 times in that 10 years, which is not surprising for people who intravenously use things like heroin, and now things like fentanyl are out, which are even more dangerous. Um, and I lived through all 6, clearly. And I'm talking waking up in the emergency room with charcoal over my chest. They had to, and not knowing how I got there, and waking up in the back of an ambulance many times, thinking what happened. Um, and I had so many friends that I used with that aren't around to tell that story,
Mm-hmm.
that overdosed even one time and died. And I don't know why, that God saw it fit every time I overdosed. I happened to be in a public place, like leaving some bathroom of a restaurant. And while embarrassing, had I done that alone in my apartment, I would be dead.
Yeah.
Um, and I know that God kept me here for a reason. And so that's why I am very open that, my belief in God and Christianity and very open about my sobriety because I feel like it would be almost a disservice to not share my story. Um, because a lot of people don't make it out. And so I
Yeah.
try to share to give people some hope.
Yeah. So now here we are. What? Well, when did you start like coaching people online? Just to kind of set a timeline here, and we'll like start
So
a
I got
podcast
into
and develop all that.
Yeah, so when I first got so I had worked in the industry. I first got certified as a personal trainer right out of high school, 2003. Um and only kept that job for about 6 months because I was just my addiction was just ramping up.
Yeah.
And so and I bounced around to a few different, companies kind of doing training and so when I first got sober, I started waiting tables just because I knew I needed a quick income. I was a convicted felon. I knew they would hire me. And so I bumped into a guy I used to work for, and he had this nutrition coaching place, but it was kind of like a glorified, like we sold supplements, we wrote these meal plans, like it was very,
Just very
it's not what I do
prescriptive.
today. Yes, like, and I'm like, I don't think we're qualified to be doing this first and foremost, but
Is
the
this
guy was
legal?
making a ton of money, yeah, and so that's all he cared about. Um, and so that's what I did from 2013 when I got the job until 2017 so I worked there for 4 years and I branched off and started what was Key Nutrition. We actually just rebranded to Next Level Nutrition in February of 2017 and still kept kind of this brick and mortar in person but I was like we got to start teaching people macros and then
Mm-hmm.
I still kind of did that and I remember Cody, our mutual friend, was like, I mean, you really don't need to see them every week in person. I was like, well, we get their body fat and we do the in body and he was like, yeah, but probably not necessary. And COVID happened and was such a beautiful thing because it forced everyone to go online. And then I realized, oh, we really don't need to do this. And so I actually still have this physical building because this is where my podcast is. And I work so much better when I get out of my house. So I don't do it
Yeah.
every day, but I come in here still like 3 days a week. I lease out a lot of the space, so it's nice. But yeah, so we really pivoted mostly online so I started the company in 2017. We pivoted online right around COVID, and then we've kind of just we've obviously stayed that way
Mm-hmm.
because Cody was right the whole time. So that's cool.
Yeah, actually, the way that we met Cody was Blakely owned a CrossFit affiliate at the time, and we were trying to transition from her owning that physical
I
gym
remember that.
to doing online
That-
coaching. So yeah. All right. So I've been listening to your podcast for a long time, and like you said, you've just rebranded Key Nutrition to next level. But I remember even then from your presentation, you had this different approach to coaching, and I think this ties into what I said earlier about people want the bicep curls and the how many grams of protein to eat, but what they really need is stuff on other sides of the equation. So tell us about your 4 leg chair approach to coaching.
yeah. So it kind of dawned on me. I was, it was actually right around that same time was kind of COVID. I had hired a business coach who actually was that's how I met Cody. So and I remember saying, "Well, what's different about what you guys do?" And he was like, "Before you kept hanging your hat on like, well, we meet with our clients in person." He goes, which obviously is not like you're not a gym, you don't need to do that. And I was like, I don't know. And so I started thinking about it and I thought, well, I think one thing we do unique is, and I remember it just came to me, I'm like, we're kind of like this chair. People come to us for this physical leg. And it's like, okay. But because of my experience in recovery and getting sober and how did I like completely change my life? Well, I kind of followed these set of principles and I really worked on all aspects of health. And here we are today. Um, you know, how can I apply this to other people? And I thought they come for us at that physical leg. But it's like this chair. If we don't have the emotion, something in the emotional, the mental slash mindset and spiritual leg, people end up balancing on this really unwobbly chair. And that was my experience with bodybuilding, which is one reason why I was kind of like, I'm going to tap out a little, was you have no choice but to put all of that effort on that physical leg. I mean, you are judged
Hmm.
by one thing and one thing only, and it is your physical appearance.
Yeah.
They don't care how good you are, if you journaled, or how much you love God up there. They care about one thing, and it's how you look.
Yeah.
And so for me, it got me. I actually loved the whole art of competing, and I loved the grind and the challenge, and like watching the body change week after week. It was I actually really enjoyed it, but I got so wrapped up in that one leg, because if you want to do well, you have to. That I feel like I was that guy bouncing on that unwobbly chair. I was actually very emotionally unstable. I was not very happy. I was not connected to God. I didn't have a ton of fulfillment. I loved the challenge. I loved the grind. But for a guy like me, the other aspects of health were so important. And I was like, well, if that's my situation, I think these clients are like that too. And so, we incorporate some, gratitude journaling or reading, or again, if somebody has Christian faith, like, what are you doing to nourish that? Like, and then letting them kind of say like what's worked for them. And it's like, cool. I'm not trying to be your pastor or anything, but what I want to do is help hold you accountable on that. Because I
Hmm.
find when you do that, I think you'll instinctively make a little better choices with your food. I think you'll put yourself as a high priority, because you will try to be live from your highest self. And you'll get to you'll do these things. And it was kind of hard for clients to connect the dots at first, but I realized that. And then I realized that's kind of what we do. It's this four-legged chair. Like, we're going to help you with the physical, but also, like, if you're like, I don't want any of that, like, you could probably go find somebody else then, because I do want to tap into these other areas. And again, we're not claiming to be life coaches or therapists or pastors. We're like, hey, what's worked for you in the past? Oh, you haven't tried anything? Hey, would you be willing to try meditation, or would you be willing to try this?
Yeah.
And giving them some things to hold them accountable. And so again, trying to get that all those legs a little bit balanced, so we're not, eventually, if you're just on this unwobbly chair, you're just going to keep falling.
Hmm. That's the problem with kind of the business approach of that first company you were working for, where you give somebody a meal plan, stuff, a list of rules to follow, and they can compartmentalize the other legs of the chair long enough to get a result, probably, but eventually those things are going to bubble back up, and this is kind of like the yo-yo dieting cycle. So I like what you're talking about. I think anybody who gets into nutrition coaching thinks that you're just going to be like prescribing macros and doing weekly check-ins and looking at a spreadsheet or averaging body weights, quickly realizes that all that is just a byproduct of focusing on the bigger picture stuff.
Mm.
What is kind of the overall mission for Next Level as it like transitions out of Key Nutrition? Like, what do you want the mission of it to be? What is the end result you want for the people who that join?
I mean, just what we were just saying. This, I have a program called the Next Level Experience. I run it 3 times a year, and it's a higher buy-in. It's small, intimate cohorts, and um, quite frankly, not the most scalable program as it is, but I love doing it. And it's obviously profitable too, but I really, really enjoy doing it. And I realized, okay, that's kind of like then, that's why it's called the Next Level Experience. It's kind of the next level of all this. But one thing, just simply from a branding perspective for any coaches, that people would be like, wait, what do you do again? I saw something about like a next level thing, but then you have a thing called Key Nutrition too. And it was just like,
Yeah.
simply just from a perspective of branding, it was like, they're kind of the same. Like, they're two separate businesses, but they're actually the same. Like, this is the higher tier. This is,
Yeah.
and so rebranding the whole company to Next Level Coaching, where it has the Next Level Experience, Next Level Nutrition, and then my Next Level Collective, which is our very affordable membership site. And I realized what we truly want to help people do is get to that next level, not just in their body, but just in life, in their confidence, in their relationship with food, in their strength gains. Like, everything is just about evolution. I think that so many people, sure, we have to change habits, but I believe it's not so much we have to change the individual. We have to either rediscover or help that person evolve. And
Hmm.
like, to me, it was just like easy to be like, well, what's that doing? Well, it's getting to the next level. And so with Next Level Nutrition, like, I want people when they finish to not just have gotten in better shape, lost some weight, got some strength gains, whatever they were after, or improved health markers, but truly feel like they've gotten to the next level in their life. Like, they view
Hmm.
things differently. They've completely changed their lifestyle. And so, and we do that by incorporating these four legs of the chair, and trying to find different little habits for each client that we can do repeatedly over and over and over to build that foundation. So,
Yeah. It's about a complete identity change, not about hitting 200 grams versus 175 grams of protein.
yes.
What so you've coached a lot of people. You've probably seen people make mistakes, and I imagine somewhere along the way you've made some mistakes in your journey too. Besides, having to dig your way out of addiction, what are some of the things that you look back on and be like, I wish I had done that differently?
Yeah, with business, I a couple things is I wish I would have hired some kind of coach or business coach or mentor sooner. We kind of spun our wheels for a couple years. The company was actually making pretty good money for being new. I just didn't understand I thought if I just paid my coaches really, really well, they'll never leave, which is true. None of them had left, but I also wasn't making any money. Like I didn't factor in like how much it actually was taking to like all these other things and roles and people I paid. And so I wish I would have hired a business coach sooner. Somebody that came, I mean, he immediately was like, okay, you got to change that. Like I'm already seeing like three glaring holes. And I'm like, okay, how do I do
Yeah,
that though? So I believe in mentorship and coaching. Obviously, we're coaches, but just in every aspect, but especially within business. And it was awfully foolish of me because when you get sober and you go through like a 12-step program, you get what's called a sponsor and you get to pick that person as long as they're willing to help you. And basically what it is just a free sober coach. Like I met with them weekly. They gave me accountability, application, education, right? And then like they gave me stuff to do and I had to do it. And I came back the next week and I met with him and um it was just coaching. Like I
yeah,
didn't really realize at the time. And again, it's free. But and now I get the honor of doing that for other people as well in the recovery community. But I, for some reason, didn't think I needed a coach when it came to business. And so I wish I would have done that different. And I think a lot of that was pride. I think it was fear about spending the money right. Um, and, that is something I wish I would have done sooner.
yeah.
Um,
That makes me wonder, like, do you feel like you have a hand up in coaching clients, on the more mindset related stuff because of all the things that you've been through?
oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the cheat
Yeah.
code.
Yeah. I mean, I try to stay in my lane. I've actually talked with Cody about this. Like, I make it very clear to clients, like I'm not giving you any clinical advice like here, but what I can tell you is here's been my experience and then try to translate that to them. And because I had that, I shifted my whole entire life and mindset and this is how I did it. Maybe it can work for you too. Like let's talk about it. I think it's absolutely helped me
Mm-hmm.
with all that. And you know, another thing what's interesting and something I wish I would have done sooner, and this is only because it's fresh on my mind as of in like the last year, is learn to create and set boundaries sooner. And that's not just in business, that's in relationships mostly. That's in life.
Yeah.
And that spills over to business. And it almost my current relationship, who, I see myself spending the rest of my life with her, probably coming up soon, but she won't listen to this, so she won't
Spoiler
be
alert.
surprised. Yeah, yeah. Um, I didn't know how to create boundaries for other people that were kind of interfering with our relationship. And a lot of that was, I just didn't know how. And looking back, I think a lack of boundaries creates so many issues in not only an intimate relationship, but I see it even, with my clients over the years, their
Mm-hmm.
lack of boundaries with other people letting them go off track because they can't set these boundaries. And so that is something I wish I would have learned to do sooner instead of the ripe age of like, I don't know when I was at 39 years old. Like I wish I would have learned that sooner.
Yeah, man, that is huge. I mean, think of all the clients who struggle with finding the time to get their workout in because they gave everything they had to people who, quote, needed it.
Yeah.
It's
Yes, exactly.
it's not like that old saying, like, lack of planning on your part doesn't constitute an emergency on my part.
Oh, yeah, I like that actually. I've never heard that. Yes.
I don't know if you want to break that out with a client or not, but
Yeah,
um,
I might.
let's change gears a little bit and talk about social media. It's a fickle mistress, man. And you've got about 200,000 followers on Instagram, and you put out consistent content for who knows how many years. Like, how do you come up with ideas, and how do you stay motivated to keep posting content? Because I will be honest, Blakely and I in the last 6 months probably have been at an all-time low as far as motivation to keep posting on social media.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm gonna obviously the people just listening won't be able to, but and I don't even know how far this goes back. Maybe the beginning of last year. But this is my content list here. Like
It's
those
a
are
note in his phone, guys. That's like
all those
hundreds
check
of,
marks, yeah,
yeah.
are ones I've already done.
Yeah,
And
I do.
so,
I do it the same way, or have done it in the same way in the past. So that is, so you basically you're doing stuff in your everyday life where you're dealing with clients, an idea comes into your mind, and you jot it down.
yes, yeah, like I go in with the intent to and what's interesting was I'm still coaching people. I actually just talked with Cody again, but he just finally like got rid of the rest of his clients. And we both always said we probably still coach too much. Probably we coach more than we have to. Um, Part of me still, I've gone through a phase where I didn't coach at all. And sure, like the money's a little better if I do choose to coach, but I enjoy it. And I
Yeah.
think I've found a good sweet spot with a number of clients that I can still, it's maybe a touch too much still, but like it's nothing like I used to coach. But I find it keeps me really in the game with content. And that's the one part I struggled a couple years ago when I stopped seeing clients altogether was I didn't realize how much they give me ideas and just their check-ins when I'm like, I just, okay, that's true.
Hmm.
Okay. If they're struggling with that, somebody else is. That was a good question. Ooh, I'm going to use that as a content piece, right? And then quite frankly, and this is I think the secret that nobody's talking about is we are all copying each other in some way, shape, or form. I have absolutely seen some pieces of content I did that I thought were original. The reality is they probably weren't. Somebody probably had already done that somewhere down the road, but maybe not, but a lot of them. But it was original to me. And I've seen other content creators kind of spin that. And I never
Hmm.
take it offensively. I'm like flattered. I mean, they don't like rip off, plagiarize the exact, content. But I'm watching, and the people I follow, I'm like, dang, that is good. I'm going to find a way to spin that in my own words. And I
Yeah.
used to have this big resistance with that. Like, nope, everything's got to be my original idea. And I remember I hired a guy by the name of Jordan Syatt, who a lot of people know, and he's become a dear friend of mine for content back early 2020. And I remember I said that to him. I was like, yeah, but I don't want to just like copy people. He goes, oh, bro, like your inflated sense of ego to think that like you are the only person that's ever thought of that piece of content. He goes, dude, nothing is really original anymore. And so he said, if you see something that resonates, yes, I'm not encouraging you to go, I'm going to post that exact same thing, the exact same verbiage, the exact same this. Cause I have seen some of my like tweet posts be
Yeah.
literally plagiarized and they just like took my name off. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, could you change a couple words? But when it came to reels, I was just like, that is such a good message. My followers probably don't follow him. Maybe some of them do. How can I? And if I'm ever like literally taking a piece, I'll say, my good friend so and so posted this and I loved it.
Yeah.
And here's what I got out of it. And so I think not being afraid to like copy what works. And I'm not saying copy it exactly. Be respectful to the person who originally created that content. And again, if I am, I'll reference them if it feels pertinent. And
Hmm.
then sometimes I spin it in a different direction enough that I'm like, at this point, the idea came from them, but the content is not like I'm not like, just talking about those. But I just had a reel that my friend, her name's Lindsay Matthews, training Lindsay on Instagram. She came on my podcast and we're talking about desserts and stuff. She said, "Why have this 4 bite rule? So if it's a big dessert, I just take 4 small bites." She said, "My theory was the first bite is delicious, so good. The second, basically, the law of diminishing results, like
Right.
returns,
Right.
right? By the fourth bite, it is not nearly as good as the first bite, and it's still really good, but not as good." And I'm like, that's kind of true. Depends on the dessert. Some are really good, but I'm like, that's true. Like by the time I get to like a big donut, by the end of it, I'm like, oh, I'm kind of sick though.
Right.
But I
But if you're
finish it.
working your way down to the graham cracker crust, then that rule goes out the window.
100%. That's a very valid point because that's the best part. Um, and I did a piece of content just recently that I said, hey, you know what? I got this. My friend trainer Lindsay, big shout out to her. Her picture flopped on. I said, I got this 4 bite rule, and here's what she said. And I literally just I never pictured that content would it's well over a million, uh uh, 1 million views now. And the Daily Mail UK picked up the story, which I've never had happen yet. I'd never even heard of it. candidly, I'd never heard of the Daily Mail, and I should. People are like, how have you not heard of it? I'm like, I don't know. Um,
You're like, I read the weekly mail. What are you talking about?
yeah, yeah. And which who really cares about that? But it was really interesting
Yeah.
that a piece of content that actually wasn't even mine. I said, hey, I've got this piece of content I'm doing. Do you care if I do it? I'll collab with you. And she was like, oh yeah, of course. So like I got her. I literally just took the exact words she told me on my podcast and said, I think this is really good. I want to give it to you guys. I collabed with her. And so I think the message, any other coaches out there and content creators is, um, even stuff like that. Like, and so obviously she's stoked. This thing got to 1 million plays. It got her more followers. She's like, this is great. And you know what she told me? She goes, I never even would have thought of doing that because I thought it was just so basic and blah that
Yeah.
no one would even like it. And here's also what I found with content creation is I have no clue what's going to do well.
Yeah.
I sometimes can have a hunch. And I'm like, if I'm like, that was really good. Like, that is so relatable. It's funny. People are going to dig that. But I cannot tell you how wrong I am most of the time. I'm like, oh, this one's going to be good. And then I check in. I'm like, wow, that one bombed. And then the ones where I'm like, it's not even going to do well. No one will see it. I'll put it up. It goes crazy.
Yeah.
And so I think just being consistent with it, but it is hard nowadays with I mean, my engagement used to be better 150,000 followers ago. Instagram's just
Mhm.
changing. So I can see I've worked with some people, mentees, where they're like, what's the point? Like 6 people like my posts. I'm like, yeah, but one of those 6 might be a client. They might turn into
Mhm.
a client. And so, but it is hard.
Yeah.
I go through, I still post a lot, like
Yeah.
4 or 5 times a week, 6 maybe. It's not every day. I take Sundays off now and I enjoy my Sunday and I do not feel guilty about it. I
Yeah.
enjoy my Sunday. And but it is hard. It's hard when also you feel like the algorithms change, no one's even seeing it. But I think that it's incredibly important to continue to try to still give value, especially with a back end motive of hopefully giving enough value that someone's like, I'm going to sign up with this guy.
Yeah.
I
Or
like this.
at least deepen the relationship. There's a lot of coaches that listen
Exactly.
to our podcast, and I like everything that you said makes sense. And I just want to like bring home the fact, and we talked about this on a business series that we did, but the goal with engagement on social media is just to provide value and build the know, like, and trust. But you got to get those people off of the platform too, because I feel like we're very close, probably within the next 12 to 24 months, of an era where it is literally like a pay to play situation where like you want any engagement, you need to sign up for Meta's $49.99 a month, whatever package they're going to creator package or whatever, or else you're not going to get to reach anybody. And
Oh,
all the people who built their business only on
100%.
social media will no longer be coaches.
100%. And so that's a very valid point is getting them off and what's interesting is a lot of the pieces of content that go viral for me aren't actually the ones that are going to get people to, necessarily always engage. But I think that's why, trying to get them, build a relationship and then get them off there and give them a free giveaway, get them on your email list, and then, get them off the platform. You own your email list. You do not own social. In fact, my social got taken down for, um, there was a fake account created of me and they have bots and they reported me as the fake one a
Oh,
bajillion times. And so I go to log in and I'm logged out and you can submit an appeal and they basically denied me. They said, no, we were right in kicking you off. And you have 2 choices at that point. You either wait 4, 5, 6, 7 months, maybe never to get your account back, or you pay these underground people way too much money that have like a connected meta that gets you back on. And it was just the point got driven home right then when I didn't have social for like 3 days. And I was like, I have to pay this much money to get this back quick. I do not
oh
own
man.
social media. I do
Yeah.
not own this. It just reinforced the fact that getting them off the platform some way into some of other media, including email, is that's when I have, I do own my email list and
Hmm.
that's much more secure.
Yeah. Man, that's
And so
scary.
these people who just are influencers and with how AI is gonna, I've always said what you just said, that's coming. I know that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then on top of that, with AI and how it's going to come, I mean, that might be more like 5 years down the road, but I just think these people who are just strictly influencers who make their money off social media, like when people say I'm an influencer, I'm like, please don't call me that. Like, I get it. I get what you're saying, but the whole
Right.
context of influencer, like I don't make my money off Instagram because I think those people are in a very, very volatile situation, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Hmm.
so 100%.
Yeah, it's scary, man. I feel sorry for those people. I was gonna wrap this up by like talking about some of the most common mistakes people make with training and nutrition, but I think we can like get to those points with me just asking you this question. Actually, we had Jordan Syatt on this podcast, and I asked him this same question. So
Oh, nice. When was
let's
Jordan
see
on?
how. Man, that's probably almost 3 years ago, something like
Oh,
that.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, before he completely blew up and you couldn't get him on anything. But okay, so the question is: let's say you woke up tomorrow with 50 pounds to lose. What are you doing to lose it?
Hmm. You said if I had 50 pounds to lose?
You wake up tomorrow, you're 50 pounds heavier than you are right now. What are you going to start doing to lose it? And let's go at this from like you don't necessarily have all of the knowledge and experience that you gained from your bodybuilding days and from all the people that you've coached. You're kind of like the person who's going to have to go on Google and be like, how to lose weight.
I'd probably go on Ozempic nowadays, but that's
That's
a whole
straight
different
fact.
rabbit hole we could
That's
go down.
facts right there. Let's leave that one alone though. Let's pretend this was 24 months ago. I asked you this
Yeah.
question.
Um, I mean, if I didn't know anything about this,
Okay, well, let's reframe it because that is tough. You would probably hire somebody if you didn't know anything. Let's look at it from like you're just the basic person who has a base level of exercise, and you know that there's calories on packages, and you know that vegetables are healthy. What are you gonna do?
yeah. Well, I'm gonna eat less and move more. No, listen, I know that's so basic. Here's what's cool is, I actually feel like, I mean, people are probably sick of me talking about it, but I think 4 or 5 years ago, I don't think people would have thought that walking could be as beneficial for weight loss as it is. We had to do the hit cardio classes. We do this, and now there's so many good practitioners in the space talking about just the massive benefits. I mean, Jordan talks about it all the time. Just like walking is one of the most fundamental, best things you can do for not just your overall health, but for fat loss. I think there's enough people and enough information saying that now that I think I would be like, okay, I need to eat less. I don't think it's rocket science to figure out, and I would start walking. And what's crazy is nowadays the reality is if I put myself in someone's shoes outside of Ozempic or GLP-1s, like there's such a carnivore push right now. I'm afraid that this person, if you were asking me and I didn't know anything, would think I just have to eat meat and sticks of butter because that's what everyone else is doing. And you put it into Google, I don't know how far that populates up, but it's probably up there. It's like it's such a push right now. I think unfortunately the answer to this is that if I was just your average Joe out there, there's so much. I feel like I would probably do something really stupid to lose that 50 pounds that wasn't sustainable. It's hard for me to like take my brain is so wrapped
Yeah,
around like the fundamentals,
right.
but um, and I think that's another reason for coaches out there. I work with coaches and even my coaches on my staff. They're like, I just don't want to post. Like, what? I'm like, I literally talk about the same 5 to 10 things. And I just spin it different ways because, and they're like, yeah, but that's just boring. And I'm like, but people need to hear it because they're getting inundated on TikTok and Instagram with the carnivore diet or this or that, or you got to do it this way and you can't do that. And oh my God. And I find that the more of us that are keep talking about, like, no, it comes back down to basics. I know this is boring, but it's okay. Here's what you can do: track your steps, track your food, hit your protein. Like, this is not rocket science and it's also not sexy, but it's okay. It's what works, right? I mean,
Right.
we preach the most unsexy message. Like, it's not sexy what we preach. And
Right.
so I think it's finding a way. I mean, to remember we need to keep talking about that because there's enough people talking about all the sexy things that are also spinning you into whatever product they're selling or program or course or that we need to band together to keep reminding people that like this is not the most sexy thing to get in shape. But man, like the basics work for the vast majority of people.
Yep. We got to keep fighting the good fight. There'll always be something popping up next week, though. But it's more ideas for content.
Always, always.
Well, let's wrap up, man. Where can people find you on the internets? What's the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, I'm most active on Instagram. It's just at the sober bodybuilder. In fact, that's really the only platform I'm active on. when it comes to social. And My podcast is the Next Level Health and Fitness Podcast on all platforms. And yeah, I mean, those are the best two ways to connect with me. So, feel free to give me a follow on there. And I try to respond to as many DMs. Sometimes I miss them. If I ever do, just send me another one. It'll always pop up to the top. So, um,
Yep.
yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate you turning me on to that book. I read it all last year. I forgot to tell you, I went through a whole entire. You actually just give a little shout out to you. My current girlfriend, Jen, we because of my lack of boundaries, among many other things, and like not healing from my divorce, you name it. Like I was just there was a lot of things, and I didn't think I was the problem. That's the sad part. She broke up with me in December of 2022, and it was actually the greatest gift. I didn't see it coming. I kind of thought like if we're gonna break up, it's gonna be me. And she was like, "I'm done," and I was like, "No, you're not." And she was done. And I hadn't been alone for a long time in my life for very long. And I knew that year it was kind of that other pivotal moment that just like when I got sober, I was like, I've got to, if I really want to find me, I've got to sit alone and I lost my connection with God. I was like, I got so lost in all this, physique and money and this and that, that like, I'm like, I don't even know who I am anymore. And this is sad. I'm like 10 years sober at this point, and I'm like, what happened? And it's one reason why she broke up with me. I just kind of was lost and all the wrong things became the focus. And I knew I had to sit alone and be alone. And not that I have any friends or anything, but no girls, no nothing. I had to just work on this relationship with me. And for me to do that was with God. And I remember I put it up on my Instagram in like January of that year. And you recommended that book and I got it. And it was just when I needed it. I did almost every single daily reading from that point all the way through 2023. And so and ended up getting her back in like August, July of last year. August, July, we started talking, and I did not see that coming. It was kind of just kind of happened, and I was like, "Whoa, I think this is like there's something here." And she was like, "You've changed. Like this is what I've been waiting for." And so, big shout out to you. That was actually a really instrumental book that helped get me back on the path of remembering what's really important in life. So that was a really long-winded way
That's
to
awesome,
say
man.
thank you. I really appreciate that.
You're very welcome. I appreciate that. I'm trying not to get choked up over here. No, that's awesome, man. I couldn't be happier for you. Well, oh, and by the way, Jordan Side's answer was to start with walking also.
Oh, yeah,
So there you go. You're in good company.
go figure.
All right, well, you guys go follow Brad. He's a great guy. Appreciate you being here, man. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you.